Okay, I'd like to call the workshop on zoning revision to order. Today is June 6th, 2019. Please rise, we'll pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. At this point, I turn the meeting over to Councilman Michael. And
Well, I mean, this was really kind of Elliot's direction. You know, we do have some comments that people said that they didn't get notice and they didn't see it on the website. So there were some general comments. There was also some comments from some people on the zoning board that felt that they didn't get a fair input on it. So I'm kind of concerned to make any final decisions. I'll make a general point that I think that this whole document is an extreme overreach. And I think that the simpler thing to have done was to leave conference centers alone and then just done what we're trying to do here simply by a special use permit, as other towns seem like they're doing, because I looked at Hyde Park, I looked at Dover, I looked at Rhinebeck, and it seemed like an easier way to do it. But to say that you must have 100 acres or more, that's just, might as well say you're not doing business unless you have a big farm. So, but I'll let Elliot really go through it because this is his document.
Before we get into it, you want to run through, I have a couple questions about last week. I think we may have, or do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, you can start with it.
Just sort of housekeeping stuff, maybe. Sure. I don't know if there are my omissions or oversights or whatever. Okay, starting with 250-42 on cluster, and this is simply a question. On page 3, section 2.
page 3 of the revised or the original?
The 5.2, the revision that Dean handed out.
I just turned, which one?
5.2,
Okay.
May 2nd version, number 2C. I thought we were going to add cultural. Are we not? Or, because we usually say, put cultural, historical, natural, scenic together. If for some reason we decided not to add cultural here, that's fine. That's just a query. I don't remember. Natural, scenic, cultural, or historical.
Why don't we leave these till when we go back to the regular, only for the fact that I think we're kind of tossing everything up, and we have an audience really that's specifically here for the conference centers.
Fine, I will hold on to these. Okay, just a general, before we get into this, because even after the public hearing, there seems to be some confusion about exactly what this is all about. So I just want to run through it again quickly, hopefully clarify. If anybody has any questions here in the audience, please ask. But the current zoning law, as it is written and interpreted today, allows, with a special use permit, for what we classify as a conference center or dude ranch, under fairly minimal requirements about acreage, access, and so on, and a definition that is perhaps a little vaguer than it should be, but for what, better or worse, that is the definition we're working with. But it does not allow for other events other than conferences, most prominently including wedding events, because country weddings have become a very popular thing recently, and we have had, and I think Arlene will attest to this, numerous inquiries about having wedding centers or wedding venues for commercial purposes, not for your daughter-in-law or your son or your next-door neighbor's kid, but as a commercial enterprise. The zoning officer has determined that they are not permitted in the town of Clinton, not being the key word. What this law attempts to do is to replace the section on conference centers with a more general set of regulations that will pertain not only to conferences, but to weddings, graduation parties, confirmations, whatever events fall into that category. Okay, so actually, what this law will do, if it is passed, will legalize what is being done at the moment illegally in the town of Clinton. Because there are venues that are running weddings, and we know who they are. They are not doing it within the parameters of the zoning law. What we're doing here, if it's passed, will legalize, make those kinds of events fall within, okay, the parameters of the zoning law. It's very important to understand that this is not restrictive. It's just the opposite. This is opening up the zoning rather than restricting the zoning. So, having said that, this 5-page, 10-page document is basically an outgrowth of 3 or 4 months' work in collaboration with a number of people who gave comments, extensive, some cases very extensive comments, including the zoning enforcement officer, who's obviously a key player in the situation, since he's the one who's responsible for enforcing this. It has not yet been reviewed by an attorney. I want to make that clear. It's not yet been reviewed by a lawyer, nor has it been reviewed by Dutchess County Planning or Ag and Markets or any other outside agency. This is strictly for discussion within the town, okay? And also, at the same time, as input, having input from a number of very helpful people, bits and pieces from others, similar laws from other towns in the vicinity, including Hyde Park, which was mentioned before, including Red Hook, town of Red Hook, town of Hyde Park, and our own conference center law. Some of this is actually taken word for word from our current zoning. Okay, that's what this document is, and that's all it purports to be. It's a starting point. I mean, hopefully it's a little bit more than a first go-around because it's been through multiple drafts. But for purposes of discussion, it's a starting point. It's not the last word. It's not intended to be anything more than a starting point. I think it's pretty well thought out. Obviously, there's always places of disagreement. Several people on the ZBA have expressed reservations about the law, not the specifics of the law so much as the philosophy behind it, and those are perfectly legitimate concerns, and I hope they'll speak to that issue tonight. Planning board, I had a discussion with the planning board. It's quite receptive to the idea. Our zoning administrator, quite receptive to the idea. But ultimately, it's the board's decision. And this is what you get. So if you want to run through it, is that your idea? Or just throw it open to the public and let people comment? However you want to play it is fine with me.
I had two, I'll call them generic comments about the thing, not going each one. The word lot, L-O-T, if you look at in the definitions, does not allow farming, reference to farming, because it says owned in fee and occupied or designed to be occupied by a principal building and buildings including. There are many farmers that own where their house is, 10 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres, and they own 4 or 5 parcels, 20, 40, 100 acres each. But you reference a lot of lots here, and some of these activities could occur on those other parcels rather than where they live. The living may have a restriction. So the definition and the use of the word lot is not consistent with the real world.
Wouldn't the issue there be whether it's a principal or an accessory use? If this were defined as a principal use, then you would not need a residence. It could be an empty 100-acre lot used for this purpose, like we're talking about with the solar panels, the same issue with the solar panels. Would that not solve your issue?
I don't think so, because you have ag and markets law, which preempts many things, and as long as the farm's in an agricultural district, it then
Well, yes,
exceeds some of these, and not everything.
Yes.
I understand
Right,
that.
right.
But it reduces the amount of restrictions you put on that property.
I think, yes, you're right. Towns do have the right to regulate, particularly if the activities are non-agricultural. So if a farmer has a lot, a 100-acre lot that he's not farming, or she is not farming, and is using for an event center, that's not covered by ag and markets, because that's not, because that is a non-agricultural use. Having said that, yes, you're right. I think what's going to happen, and it's impossible to predict this ahead of time, but each time an application comes in, we'll go to the planning board, we'll have to go to, if it's a ag property, ag and markets will obviously be called on, as they are now, and always have been, as an interested agency. And I think you're going to have to deal with that, or the planning board, I think, is going to have to deal with that issue on a case-by-case basis, because there may be some cases where ag and markets weighs in and the planning board says, okay, but there may be other cases where that doesn't happen. I don't see how we can, I appreciate your concern, but I don't see how we can predict those situations ahead of time.
They're just the real world. I'm just referring to the real world.
Yeah, but we do have the right. We don't have to give up all our rights just because
No,
somebody
I didn't
has a
say
farm.
everything, but
So I think we need, I mean, we can establish parameters, and then the planning board always has the option of varying those parameters. I mean, we say it has to be 100 acres for argument's sake. It doesn't have to be 100 acres, that's the number that's in here. But that doesn't prevent the planning board from saying, you can do 50 acres, we'll give you a variance, you can do 50 acres. We say the limit of 300 people. Planning board can say 400 people. You can always have a variance. And in fact, that's typically what we've done with ag and markets. If ag and markets says X, Y, Z, the planning board will do that to accommodate ag and markets if it's a reasonable situation. But that doesn't mean the planning board has to completely, or the town has to completely give up its.
no, I didn't say that, but there are certain things by the ag and market law
Well, I
that they're
think
entitled to be able to do.
Yes,
And
yes,
that's
but non-agricultural
what-
events.
I know there's safety and
Those issues
are
transcend.
ours. are
Exactly.
ours. And I'm not fighting that.
Right.
but I'm
Okay,
just saying
no, that's fine.
the way the word lot is used here, and then how it permeates all through this document
Well,
is,
it's interesting you should raise that issue, because the original version used the word, well, either property or site. And one of the people who looked at this at some length and made very, very helpful comments said, you know, property, the words property and site are not defined in the zoning law, but lot is. So why don't we use lot? And I said, that makes sense. But
all I'm saying is improve it to allow open land without a residence on it, that's all.
okay, well,
That's for farming.
Okay.
To allow farming purposes.
okay, well, that is fine. I mean, that's the intention, but we can make that more explicit, sure.
Yeah. But I think, that's important.
What was the second one?
Well, the second one actually was the ag district thing.
Oh, okay, I thought there were
Yeah,
two.
yeah.
Okay,
I mean, it morphed into that, but.
That's fine.
That's what the other one was.
sure, okay.
Because it's not stated at all in here,
you're right.
really. It's like about this much of a paragraph, and it's at the very end, and it's
Yes.
sort of oversight.
Which was actually not in one of the previous versions, but was suggested by somebody else who reviewed it. And it seemed like a good idea to incorporate it.
But, you know,
You know, the specifics Dean referred to, 100 acres, that's, at some level, that's an arbitrary number. I looked at the.
Well, we
yeah.
started out originally with the 250-45 at 25 acres,
Right.
and obviously, if there's a golf course, obviously, it needs more land, so it bumped it to 75, but you took it and bumped it again. I mean,
Well-
to me, like I told you, when we started this whole thing, I'm more worried about setbacks and buffers to the neighbors.
Yes, and that's.
To me, acreage is arbitrary. If you're situated on 100 acres, but you happen to be right on the corner of the road,
Yes.
it's not as good as being on 10 acres and being in the center somewhere. I mean, there's a difference.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I guess I agree with that to some extent, but I'll tell you how I came up with the 100. It wasn't entirely arbitrary. Looking at the laws that I mentioned from other towns, Hyde Park had 10. Red Hook had 500. So 300 sort of split the difference.
Red Hook 500 also allowed 500 mass gathering, 300 mass gathering.
Well,
I
we
mean,
have
so,
that, but we have that too.
well, I mean, if you look at other sections in the town, Church is 5 acres,
I have no objection to lowering the number, but I think if you.
campground's 10 acres.
You lower 100, I don't think
Educational
you can have-
institution, 10 acres. I mean, I'm just saying that we should be consistent throughout our code with other sections where the same concern would apply to noise, traffic, and everything else.
I think-
And you want to exempt, that's another point that I wanted to bring up, is you want to exempt all nonprofits, and I think they should be subject to the same rules.
Except churches don't have 100 acres, typically.
none of them do.
Right.
I know that.
Yeah.
True, but
So that's why. we
But the
exempt-
same noise and
Yes,
traffic and
yes.
everything else is a concern to,
Yes.
to residents.
My issue there is that for a church or a firehouse or the Historical Society or a similar kind of
Or the park.
organization, these are nonprofits as opposed to commercial.
What's the difference if it's a nonprofit?
Only that they are not doing it for money. They are doing it as a quote-unquote
So
community service.
you've beat up profit, like apartment buildings, when we were talking about apartments. You
No.
beat up profit all the
No,
time.
I think you
To
can
me,
just-
that's discriminatory.
Well, it's not.
Let's
I don't think so.
concentrate on what we're concerned about, which is
I-
noise, disturbance,
I
you
don't
know,
think, I don't
traffic.
agree. I agree with you on the second part of what you said, but not on the first part. I think you can distinguish, and you should distinguish between commercial enterprises and community enterprises. A church, a historical society, a firehouse, these are community services who have been doing this for years, and I don't think we should discriminate against them by forcing them into a box that is totally unrealistic. They don't have 100 acres,
They never
right?
will.
And never
Never
will.
will.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. So
So by
Sorry.
exception that they're already in existence, we
totally
can make an
different things.
exception, but if they want to expand their venues, then they should comply to the current rules.
fine. I mean, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with
But
that.
that's
if you're gonna-
true with any law that
If
we
you're going to
make.
reduce the minimum from 100 acres to 50, you can't put 300 people on 50 acres.
Well, that's true
So
too.
you've got to, that's fine. I mean, all these things fit together. You can't just change one and
Right,
not
but
change
you're
others.
jumping right to the 300 and saying that's the standard.
That's
And
the
everybody
max.
has to come in with a special
maximum.
use
That's the maximum.
exception
500 is the
to lower it.
No, not for this. For this, it's 300.
Well, what else would you, what other event would you have where you would bump against the 500 limit?
If you wanted to put on a one-time rock concert on your property, that would be, that's a mass gathering that requires a special use permit for that event alone. This is an ongoing thing. You get it, you've got it for life.
Oh, it's like a variance that goes with the property.
This stays with the property, like Old Stone Farm. Old Stone Farm has a special use permit, they've had it for a dozen years, to run a conference center. They don't have to come into us each time they want to have an event, unless it's different from what they've been doing in the past. If they meet the restrictions of their special use permit, it goes on and on and on and on, forever. If you want to have a one-time thing, that's a different story.
But
That's where the mass
An
gathering.
event is an event. Why are we picking on weddings?
We're only picking on weddings because that is where, in today's marketplace, that is where the bulk of the demand, well, you're asking me, I'm telling you, that's where the demand is coming from. Country weddings have become a very fashionable, popular event for people who live in urban areas or suburban areas, and they want to come up here and have open space. That's great, that's wonderful. No one is saying not to do it. All this law, in fact, this law is saying to people who want to that, yes, you can do this, but you got to follow some rules about whatever, about acreage, about maximum, about noise, about access, about sanitary facilities. Right now, it's open-ended. That's all this is trying to do. I mean, what we're trying to do here
But I think it went to the
is
extreme.
make it easier for people.
So what solutions do you offer instead of just saying no, 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 no? I need to hear, it's like, if there's something you don't agree with, then you have to,
Well, I have specific
let's do
comments,
it.
but I feel that the whole thing jumped to the max. It doesn't give any, let's say, separation between someone who's doing maybe 10 or 15 people versus 300. It doesn't give a gradual scale, so that we're making everybody jump through the same hoops, whether you're 50 people or 300 people. And we're
Yes, that's true.
gauging everything based on 300,
Yes.
which means that we want dual access, and I don't think you need it for something on a smaller scale.
Well, again, that's, I mean, in an ideal world, yes, what you're saying is true. But I think you run into two issues. Well, first of all, again, the planning board can issue a variance. If somebody comes in and asks for a special use permit to run events of no more than 50 people, but gee, can I only have one access? The planning board can say yes.
No, the planning board got to go to
And
to
give
the
it. well,
ZBA.
Okay, fine. The ZBA can say, yes, we'll give you a variance. You only need one access, one point of access, but you can't have more than 50 people. You got a deal. Okay, so there's one thing. The other thing is that, okay, what was the other thing? It was really intelligent, whatever it was. It was very perfect.
Senior moment.
Okay, anyway, I forgot the other thing, but it can be varied. Oh, yeah, the other thing I think the question becomes, the more permutations you introduce, like a sliding scale, for example, it's fine, ideally, but it gets more complicated.
Oh, yeah.
It just gets more and more complicated the more permutations you introduce. And so it seems to me that the easiest way to do it, from the enforcement point of view, is to simply establish what we would consider to be a maximum, and then work down from there. And again, the planning board, and if necessary, the ZBA, will treat each one of these applications, as they do now, as an individual application. And they will make their decisions based on the size of the property, the layout of the property, the access to the property, whatever. I mean, that's,
please.
No, you got to
Come up to the mic.
Stacy Higgins, Old Adrian's Farm. I do have a question. I have read over everything.
What page number? or where
I'm
are
on
you?
page 3,
Okay.
location of facility, which you are talking about the 100 acres.
Right.
Okay, which is a minimum of 100 people. So then it goes on to every additional 20 attendees, you have to have an additional 10 acres. Then you go to page 5, and you're talking about the 300 people, a maximum. So does that mean that that property has to have 320 acres to have that special permit, or
actually-
that special event?
I can tell you exactly how much you would need, because I figured it out.
Well, I did also,
What'd you
little
come-
calculator
yeah,
here.
what'd you come up with?
But I came up with 320 acres you would need for 300 people.
Okay, well, let's assume that's it.
I could be wrong, but
Well, either way.
I just
mean,
needed that
that's,
explained
yeah.
to me.
Well, that's the idea, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
that
mean,
is,
assuming the number is right, yes, that's the idea. So if you wanted to max out at 300, you
you
would
would need that acreage. Okay,
328.
that's exactly
for
what I
argument's
need to
sake,
know.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
From my general knowledge of all the parcels in town, of the things that would be doing this, there aren't many 300 acres.
Interesting.
It's almost
Well,
self-defeating.
well, only at 300 people, remember, because in this case, there is a scale. I actually sat down with Teresa,
Yeah.
and I asked her to pull a list for me, this is the assessor. I said, I need a list of the parcels in town that have 100 acres or more, and access, oh no, just 100 acres or more. And she gave me a list of 15 parcels.
That's right.
Okay. I then went to parcel access, and I looked up each of these 15 parcels to see how many of these have access to a state or county road, which is one of the conditions in here. And that number came down to 8. So there are 8 parcels in town, give or take.
Yeah.
my math may not be perfect, but I came up with 8 parcels in town, Adrian's being one of them, that have the necessary acreage and the necessary access. Now, but then I had a follow-up thought. What if a person owns 2 parcels contiguous?
Side by side.
Each one is 50 acres.
That's what I said.
Okay. Well, so I asked the assessor, and she said, I can't search for that, but I would guess they're approximately the same number. So going on the basis of what she said, obviously we need to do a more scientific search. We're talking about maybe 15 parcels in the entire town that have 100 acres and access to a state county road. This is a pretty small number. But now that's for the 100. Once you get higher in terms of, that's your baseline for however many people. Once you get higher than that, obviously that's going to come down. The numbers are going to come down. But, I mean, we're really not talking about a lot of parcels here in the town of Clinton. We're talking about very few, relatively speaking.
Good evening, everyone. Chris Giuliano, 777 Center Road. I have a few comments that because I had a chance to read it, and Elliot sat down with us in the zoning board the other night. My first concern is if we're bringing this, letting people do, because these are going to be events that we're opening up where they can run them every weekend at that point. We're actually changing the zoning, if it's going from residential to GB, general business, because they're going to be serving food, alcohol, most likely. They're going to, entertainment of sorts. So, I mean, we're allowing this to go onto the property. Now, first of all, I'm a capitalist. I believe in property owners' rights and all that, but I also understand after working on and off for almost 4 years on the zoning revision on this document, where we were trying to go with what the comprehensive plan stated what people were looking for, right? So a few things what people were looking for was trying to keep the setting the way the traffic is and some other stuff that, you know, we've had, you know, that we learned to love up here. Changing this is we're going to be bringing a lot of outsider people coming up and traffic on our county roads. Ellie was trying to limit it down to county and state roads. The other issue that I have on top of, since we're changing it, because you'd actually have to change the whole property at that point from residential, because you're running a big business at that point, and it is for profit. And what does the town get out of that? As residential, we don't get any more tax base or anything else on that, like in a regular town like Hyde Park, Poughkeepsie, that has businesses to offset some of the taxes for our residents. So there's not a benefit to our local residents that's going to help us out with our tax base on this unless something was changed straight across the board and rezone, redistrict, if you want to say that. My other concern is the safety aspect. With our fire departments, our EMS, everything else that's up here, we're not geared like Town of Poughkeepsie or Hyde Park to have that. I mean, we have contentious issues that are going on within one of the fire departments. You know, that there's issues going back and forth between commissioners and from what I understand, some of the officers always threatening to leave on certain issues. So how do we determine and make this safe? And if we are, then we got to try to get some sort of tax base. There's got to be some sort of incentive for the town and the people to build our tax. If that's because we only have a handful of businesses in this town. So us residents, and when people have ag exemption, they're also being on the bar committee, the Board of Assessment Review, for several years now. When they're getting ag exemption, they're getting reduced taxes. So us on our smaller properties are subsidizing all that. So there's a point where we got to start looking at saying, as the taxpayer, what is the benefit to us other than allowing someone that has 100 acres, which, like I said, if I had 100 acres, I'd say I'd be up to trying to find a way to make money off that property to pay for itself, especially a lot of these people are city people that are coming up here, which is great. They want the lifestyle we want to have too. But they're looking for ways to subsidize, and it is a big business. And anyone who knows catering, and I was partners in a restaurant for a few years, it is highly profitable. So we got to start asking everyone, everyone's got to sit here and just say, hey, what is the incentive? How is this going to benefit the town other than allowing someone to make a lot of money off their property? We're going to put extra wear and tear on the roads, okay? you know people are still gonna go on town roads. You're not gonna all keep them all onto county roads. They may have entrances in, but they're gonna find, GPS kind of takes you around the scene anyway. So, I mean, these are all legitimate concerns that I have.
So can I ask you a question, actually?
Sure, Mike.
Because I hear what you're saying, and I agree with actually more than you would think. But one of our issues here is Adrian's. The current law says that they can't do what they're doing. So how do we solve this where we're not putting somebody like them out of business? And answer your concerns.
Well, then I would say, at this point, then we have to talk about possibly rezoning that or part of the property as having general business, GB, where we can, that the tax rates change on that. As a commercial property owner in other parts of the county, my business, you have general GB property.
But it would still not necessarily fall within the comprehensive plan and what the community said they
Well,
wanted.
I mean, first of all, how long have they been running their property like that?
We have not, I'm the farmer.
Oh, you're a farmer. Well, first of all, and this is the thing. I'm 100% for farming. I'm 100% for trying to preserve our township, and because the farms are dying off. The local farmer, I have friends that are farmers that try to make it work. I think it's a viable. I think it's important for our town to maintain that. I think some of that stuff, and I'm going to say this. I have a few people that I think might be kind of pushing Elliott on this direction to try to change this. I think with ag exemption, with ag and markets, there are ways around this that would be, like the new vineyard that's coming up on Hollow Road, would either they're selling their product, which kind of opens up. There's ways that do that, and I think some of that we would have to interpret and ask ag and markets to see, because I think some of this stuff we're out reaching for a farm that's an existing farm that's working to do something. There's other farms that are doing this, so there may be a current law that's within ag and markets. I don't know. I haven't looked.
That law, I do know that law.
You do know that law?
If
Just kind of, if you can give me, because I don't.
Well, you can't talk back and forth to
Oh,
each
I'm
other.
sorry.
So you can talk what you have to say, then she can come up and either answer your questions, but not, she has to direct it to us.
If the event is ag-related, then it is covered by ag and markets.
Yeah.
There's no argument about that. There's no.
They're selling, if they're having their product at the.
Fine.
That's,
Fine.
if you're a winery or you're having your
Fine.
produce, your food. or whatever,
Selling eggs,
But
Counts.
that's not a problem.
watermelons.
That's not a
and
problem.
marginal.
But I really
Oranges.
think it comes down to a question where we as a town have to ask, how can we either, get some sort of benefit out of this? Other than, it's kind of like, and I'm going to bring this up because I know we're not talking about this, and I got here late, so I don't know if we talked about solar yet. When we spent a long period of time on the zoning revision committee, Dean, myself, John, Collegiero, we sat and looked at about
I was on
solar.
it too, remember, Chris?
What's that?
I was on the zoning revision.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not to, didn't mean to signal you out.
Just for the
But,
record.
No, I know you were.
Okay.
When we sat and we worked on that, all of us collectively, not based on party lines or anything else, we sat there trying to work out realistic values and the commercial aspect of it, solar farming. The big thing was, at that point, no one wanted to see 1 million panels in front of their yards. And there was a couple properties that came up, and everyone looked at it and said, oh man, they're going up on the front yard and everything else. And then now we're talking about taking, solar farms in 5 acres or whatever it's gonna be. Let me tell you something, anyone needs to go down, there's a few places, but I'll tell you the one I drive past all the times, I have a lot of clients on Spack Hill Road, is Oakwood, okay? That's a solar farm. They have the mass amount of panels, acres worth of them. The other issue with that is, which I've been doing some research on this since I've heard this come up, is the infrastructure. We may be able to open it up. Most people might not have the cost to put that in, because the infrastructure to get to the grid is quite costly to do that. So, I don't know how many people would truly do that because of our location where our power lines are.
With all due respect, we do have a public hearing on the solar law coming up before Tuesday's meeting.
I just wanted to say
Yeah.
that, my schedule, I'm coming back and forth, and that was one of my concerns. So I'll I'm sorry it took so much time.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm sorry, the lady from Adrian's. What's your name?
Tracy.
Stacy.
Stacy. I came up with 230 acres to get 300 people.
Okay, so, all right.
But so,
Thank you very much. I said,
Anyway.
I just said on a piece of paper.
yeah, I came up with, yeah, that was my number. For 300 people, no, to get, but then it goes up 10 acres for 20 people. It goes up 10 acres for each 20 people.
So you need 100 more acres for another 200 people, so 200 acres.
So I can, 230 I came up with. Well, I just went through.
See, if
and
we
I
can't figure it out and we're writing a law, I think that's a real problem.
Here's what I did.
But Stacy, if you want to come up and explain
20 people.
that
Yeah, but
ag,
you can't just double it. You got to go up 10, 20,
So
10,
if you want
20.
200, it should be 100
Because
acres.
it's not
So,
it's not
with
arithmetic.
the
It's
ag
not
and market, I
geometric.
have been talking to Cornell
Anyway,
Cooperative
never mind.
Extension. I have talked to Albany, the top gentleman up there also. The new rules and regulations for ag and market, I am all for having rules and regulations for event centers and event space itself, for safety reasons, for watching what, for our municipalities coming in and knowing what needs to be, what's going on. So in case there's an emergency, I have no problem with that. I understand that. What I'm doing, like I said, I'm a woman-owned farm business. I work on my farm on a daily basis. I'm producing hops, I'm producing eggs and vegetables, and I am going to be also producing malt barley. So with ag and market, the rules are that I have to produce on my property 51% of my product, my beer, has to be made on my property. And that in turn, if I do have a special event, my product has to be sold at that event, at a graduation party. They have to buy my beer. They have to buy my vegetables. There has to be 51% of my product going into that event. So those are the rules and regulations on ag and market. And that's the only reason that it's a subsidy for us, to help us pay for our taxes and to help us, This is first. We were in 4-H for 12 years. My children, we have learned. This is the first I've been on farming firsthand, on my hands and knees, picking, roping hops and all that, and it's very interesting. I'm very excited about it. But we do need to make a little bit of extra income to subsidize for us to survive.
There's no issue with anything you said.
Exactly, and
No issue
there's
whatsoever.
no issue with me either with the
Right.
rules and regulations of what's going on.
What this law is intended to do is simply to ensure that people who are setting themselves up in business, not in your context, but as a general business, to have weddings or parties, big gatherings on their property on a regular basis, not a one-time thing, but an ongoing thing, that they're regulated. That- I mean, if you're a farm and you're selling your stuff, more power to you. That's great.
I read through this, and it is 10 pages, and what I would like, and I'm sure everybody else would like, is A to Z. You're going through, and we need a self-explanation of what you need from us, because wasting our time coming to you, the planning board, and then having to wait 2 weeks to get that done, it's going to take us a year to two to even get it passed. I'm sorry, I just feel...
It's going to do, I'm sorry.
To get something passed through the planning board or the zoning board.
Well,
We need it
shouldn't.
more legible, so people like us know what we need to come in with and check off our list that we have that done.
Basically, what you would do would be the same thing that anybody else would do in that kind of situation, is you would come in and sit down with the zoning officer, spend an hour with him, or half hour with him, or what have you, run through a checklist of what you need to do, and then you would go home and you would do a site plan or whatever, and come in with a thing, with a proposal, with an application, which I know you've done before, in other contexts. The planning board would review it. If all the information, big if is that it's complete.
Right.
If you get something that comes in that's half complete, it goes back. But if you do it right, and I'm sure you will, you come in with a complete application that responds to the issues and the questions that the zoning officer says you need to do. The planning board will review it. We'll send it out assuming again that it's in good, that the application's in good shape, they will send it out. They will have to get outside comments on it. Obviously, Ag and Markets would be one of them. County Planning, Fire Department would have to look at it because of access for safety and so on and so on. I mean, I would think a couple of meetings, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, a couple of meetings should do it. Yeah, go ahead.
Gotta come up to the mic.
To the mic.
You have to go,
But-
yeah, I mean, I would think.
But
two-
if I'm wrong, I'm getting something else as to what she's saying. She wants to, definitions, you want more detail.
I do, more detail.
And I just wanna
For
tell
somebody
you-
new coming in,
And I'm gonna tell you.
for somebody new coming in, no, they will not know what
And
this
I'm
means.
gonna tell you how.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so it's a one process approval, right? It's not like every event they're gonna have
Stay
to,
by the microphone.
right? They don't have to come every
just
event.
once,
So
just
it's a
once.
one process approval.
Unless
So let's
it's
say
a
you
one
come in-
shot.
You come into the planning board, the first thing that we're gonna do, initial, we're gonna need the town consultants. We're gonna need the town planner, the town engineer, because they have to review the parking lot, the noise, the building, everything. So your planner, we're gonna work with our town planner, escrow, money, and everything like that. Until then, so in the process. So let's say everything is complete, a month, 2 months, depending on your, you know, how quick your engineer or whoever, you're gonna go with the Department of Health and everything. So, public hearing is gonna be set, every neighbors are gonna be called in, and then you're gonna go through the process. 2 months, probably you'll be done, but that's it. And then after that, you don't have to come every time. So, as long as you follow those regulations, you have the minimum, you have the criteria. If you have to go beyond those criteria, you're gonna go another step process for variance. But otherwise, it's not gonna be like, what would you like to say?
And the important thing is you don't have to do it every time you have an event.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's saying that we have to reapply every year. So if there's a problem, are we gonna know in advance? So when we come to reapply, that our business, if we end up doing this, is a year in advance. People book a year in advance. And I know that with the public hearing for the moratorium, we had a wedding planner here, and she was saying that it is a year in advance, it's 2 years in advance, and it's people in the county that are losing jobs by if per se, I do not get my permit the next year, I'm losing, and I'm being sued also that I am not fulfilling my obligation and my legal obligation here for signing a contract.
Omega gets the permit every year. Omega, they get their permit every year, RV Interlake.
All I ask is if we would find out beforehand, because this is what you're putting in here, are we going to find out in advance if we are not, we're not in accordance to the special permit for the following year? We need to know beforehand so we can come in and fix this immediately, because we do have income coming in and people are depending on us. Say your daughter's getting married in 2020 and you pull my permit a month before she's coming in, what am I supposed to do? That's exactly my question here.
Okay.
Can I say something?
I still get what she's talking about is the qualifications versus the process. Everyone here is talking about the process she's going to go through to make it happen. She wants to know more about the detail for the qualifications
Exactly.
for what she's doing.
Thank
Is
you.
that
Yes, that's exactly.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Well,
Well, hold on. So I think you should want to include in your, that approval process that the planning board can't have the right to waive a requirement, an item, you know, like we always, every time.
Can or cannot?
This- What's that?
would you say can or can't?
Can. They have the power to waive,
Well,
let's
that-
say,
sure. Of course
let's
they
say the
do.
public hearing every year. If there's a change, then we do the public hearing. If there's no change, then we could just.
Did you look at section H, where it talks about the, are there issues there that are confusing or, I mean,
There is,
or ambiguous? I'm not asking that in a snarky way, I'm just curious, because to me, it seems pretty straightforward, but if there's issues that need to be addressed, then that would be certainly to do it.
well, for special use permit, you're giving us, we need ample sound permission, I would just like to know what, if it's 40 decibels, I would like to know in advance, a piece of paper showing me this is exactly the rules I need to follow. And this way, I will follow them. There's, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But if I don't know what the rules are, then how can we follow them? And how can I be, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly what I'm looking for, is rules to follow on a piece of paper,
Okay.
so I have
All right.
it in front of me, black and white.
Well, I think that's doable. That we can do, I think. Sit down with the zoning administrator and work out some sort of a procedure.
Yeah, the thing I think is also in her dilemma is she knows what it takes to start the process, but she doesn't know what it takes on a yearly basis. In other words, to just fill out 3 sheets of paper and submit it, or does she have to go with a big drawing with all the
No.
buildings that,
I mean, not that I would, that's not how I would see it.
but it's not written that
I mean,
way.
what I would see it
That's-
basically in terms of the renewal, again, assuming that other things being equal, I would see the renewal process as being similar to what we do with the campgrounds, where you fill out a 2-page application,
And that's it.
and you sign it, and you have checked for whatever it is, and you're done.
The ZEO goes out and inspects and,
You're done.
Now, it doesn't say on the last second page.
What's that? What's that?
We got two.
number 2 in the second page.
The first page was
Number 2 on the first page? Page 2.
the very last.
At the bottom, at the bottom?
Page 2 at the bottom. Compliance, said seeker.
Yeah.
Page 2 is seeker.
Yeah, I don't see that, I'm sorry.
Page 2 under H, H2.
Oh,
Oh,
H,
H.
H is in every.
Yeah, that's on page 8, not 2.
well, that's,
Oh, there we go.
oh, and a public hearing before the planning board, you're right.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay. We can remove it.
Strike that.
Strike it.
Give the
Okay,
planning board
fine.
The right to
Strike it.
waive it.
Yep, okay, or give the, well, the planning board has, yeah, or, fine.
I think if there's a change, then you go to the public.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd want to keep it and give the planning board the option of waiving it. Because, I mean, if there are issues that have to be addressed by the public,
Or changes or anything.
yeah, then you want that, so we can give the planning board the option of waiving the public hearing.
Add another section. planning board has.
This is on,
Yeah, I see them.
you see where it is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which they can do now in other cases. They
But
can
if there are
waive.
other elements of the renewal process that they can waive, she should know about that, for example, in advance, so she doesn't have to spend money
Well,
to make
okay.
drawings or whatever else, because that's her
Okay.
interpretation of the form.
Right, okay, well, we'll simply lay out that basically, as I see it, all that's required would be an application.
Simplified
Very
application.
simple application, like we do with the campgrounds. 3-page application, and that's all it is.
Can you include their narrative, because we want to see the details of the
Fine, 3-page application and a narrative. But they don't need the site plan and all the other stuff that would go with the original application.
Unless it changed.
Russ,
Well, unless it changed, of course, yeah.
let's recognize,
Russell is being very patient,
Yeah, Russ Tompkins,
Oh, he's still
Shelton.
here.
uncharacteristic.
I think you were just hitting on a point that I was going to hit, so I'll just go over that. Page 9, I had to number these pages. Page 9, under H2, special use permit shall be issued no longer than the end of the year. That's where you were just dealing with, correct?
Yep.
And I put down, seems excessive, maybe otherwise it can be revoked for cause without yearly special permit renewal. But if it's just going to be an application put in and the hearing can be waived and the planning board can approve of it, I like that idea. And it sounds like that's what you're just talking about, correct?
Right. Well, basically it provides an opportunity for people who feel that they are being intruded upon or feel that the property owner is exceeding the noise limits or what have you, to come in and voice their concern. That's all it's intended to do.
All right, well, I've been waiting, and I'm just going to mention several things on this. And I hate to be sarcastic, but maybe I don't really hate
No,
to
you
be
don't.
sarcastic. And I said, do you really need 10 pages to simplify what was originally 2? Now, you keep mentioning variances. You can get a variance, you can get a variance. I, on my own volition, attended training over to the Farm and Home Center. 2 were on secret, 1 was on streamlining a process. And I specifically remember one of the instructors over there, I believe from Albany, saying, don't give use variances, don't give use variances. Once you put them out, they're permanent. Don't give them. And you're talking about the fact that sound like you're giving out variances very easily here.
But these are area variances. They're not use variances. And a use
They
variance.
just said, don't give out variances. They don't want
Oh, don't
variances
give out
issued.
variances.
Because once you do it, it's permanent. If you have a special
Oh, yeah,
permit.
that's true.
That's true.
So,
Yes.
but I mean, I'm against that mindset that was displayed at that training. I think that was very restrictive and very against people's rights. I think variances are important. I think they should be given out, but I will point out that they said you should not be issuing variances. I hope we don't go along with that system here.
Say that again?
They specifically said at the training session over there that we should not be issuing variances.
But you don't agree with that.
That's
I
what
don't
he
agree
said.
with it.
That's what he said.
But now
He
we're
says,
giving out-
he says he hopes we don't act what they were saying.
This seemed to be coming down from on high, Albany, that evil place up there, that you should not be issuing variances.
Well,
And I think it's a necessity that
yeah,
you
that's
should be issuing.
that's a blanket rule that's unreasonable.
But Russ, let's move on. Do you have specific things that you want to talk about? We could talk about what Albany does. It doesn't matter to us.
Yes, on page 3, which is under E, I can't believe that in the original it was 25 acres and you're going up to 100. I think that's excessive. And before, in the old section, for 100, you would only need 55 acres, adding the so many acres per 20 people. So for 100 people on the old section, you would need 55. Now you need a minimum of 100 acres. I think this is far too excessive. I think on 100 acres, you could have 500 people without a problem. And it's, to have, you said it would need 200 and some acres. If they have 130 some acres over at the Adrian's farm, to go up to that number you came, they could not do that. I think that
130 acres, they could have 190 people or 110 people, according to my calculations.
Yeah.
That's what they could have at 130
And,
acres.
I don't know if you know about weddings, but weddings tend to get, everybody and their brother gets invited. You could easily exceed that. On page 4, you had the site of the event shall have at least
No,
2
just
means
wait,
of...
no, wait, while you're still on that, I just want to make reference to it. Say you're having sort of an open event, not a closed one like a wedding is where you get invitations, et cetera. But say you have a fundraiser for somebody, okay, crippled children or something, I don't know. And, you invite all the people to come and you charge them $5 a head or whatever it is and all. You have no idea how many people are coming. You could have 25 and you say, "Ooh, look at all the money I'm losing." You could have 300 people come. You have no idea. You're not going to have a gate guard that's going to say, "Oh, we've reached the limit," and you put the gate down.
But again, remember that we're differentiating one-time events from ongoing events. The idea behind this law, which deals with ongoing events, is that I come in and say, I've got a parcel of property, and I would like to set myself up in business having events. Weddings, what have you, wakes, you name it. And I have to do a site plan, or an event management plan, as it's referred to in here, which is no different than anybody else would do in regard to having to get a special use permit. And one of the things I would need to do would be to say that this is what I anticipate having in terms of the number of people. And the planning board will give or not, the planning board approval will stipulate you're allowed to have up to X number of people and the hours of operation and so on and so on. You're talking about a one-time event,
No,
which is a different thing.
not a one-time event. In their category of during the year, they could have weddings, they could have fundraisers, they can have
Okay, so a client...
all of
com-
these things.
So I assume when a client comes to them, one of the
Yes,
first questions they're going to say is, how many people do you anticipate at your event? And if they say, I don't know, we could have 500, they'd say, sorry, you can't do that.
can't
You
do
know?
it. You can't do it.
I don't...
I mean, there may be cases
I
where...
mean, we may anticipate some night to go over the occupancy that's posted on the wall here. What
Yeah.
would we do? We'd have to tell people, no, you gotta go.
There may be cases where the planning board will look at the lot, as Dean was talking about, the setbacks, the structures, the neighboring properties, whatever, and say, no, we don't think you should have 300 people here. We want you to limit it to 200 people, or 150 people. That's within the province of the planning board, and if the applicant agrees, and that's written into the approval for the special use permit, and the client comes in and says, we want to have 400 people, he says, I'm sorry, I can't accommodate you. My special permit does not allow for that.
What's the definition of a one-time event? Once in a year, once in a month?
Thought we had that in there.
Well, what we have in here is, as part of the event management plan, you're supposed to, the applicant is supposed to give a notice of how
Yeah,
many...
but
how many
one-time events
per
are
year.
exempt, so
How many
they wouldn't have a plan, they wouldn't have any of that.
Say what?
One-time events are exempt, so they wouldn't have a plan or anything.
What is a one-time event? Okay. Twice a year. I mean, I don't know. We have to pick out a number that we agree on and say, this is a one-time event.
Yeah, but you don't know. I mean,
Well-
she may have funerals, people have, and who knows when people die?
That's- Well, no, I mean, but you can't anticipate all of the things that could possibly
But
happen.
that's what you're asking to do when
No.
you're putting in your plan.
No, what I'm asking for is a basic set of regulations that will govern how these venues function. Not trying to anticipate everything that will happen. So we're going to have to, as in the case of the zoning law is always in flux. You cannot anticipate. The zoning law that we're working on right now in 5 years, who knows? That's why you have a ZEO his job is to interpret it. I mean, that's part of what we pay him to do. We can't anticipate everything. These things come up all the time. The weddings came up. Who anticipated country weddings 25 years ago?
If you want us to anticipate absolutely
I mean, you
everything, we're
can't.
definitely gonna go over Russell's page limit rule.
That's right.
For my what?
Your page limit rule.
So,
I do think it's totally excessive, though, to go from 25 acres for 50 people to a minimum of 100 acres. I mean, 25 acres only allowed you 50 people, okay? So if you meant more, like I say, if you went up to 100 people in the old count, you'd need 55 acres. I think that's much more reasonable than to say you gotta have 100 acres for basically any number, And
every Christmas, I would have a Christmas party back
It's-
in the good days, and I've had over 50 people in my house, so 50 people is not a lot of people.
so I would think that under E, the amount of acres should be reduced, and I would prefer it be reduced to what the original was, 25 acres.
I'll tell you how that happened. Actually, in the version that I did, it was lower. The numbers were lower. But the number of people on the zoning board, several of whom are here tonight, were very concerned about intrusion on the neighbors. And so I increased the numbers to make it more restrictive.
Well, I think you have other things in there that protect against intrusion,
Well,
Like
which
setbacks,
I
which
will,
was my
which
point.
I will address
it's
later.
all- But yeah, I mean, it's all a package. But anyway, okay.
Well, that's my feeling, it's excessive at 100
Okay,
acres.
all right.
Okay. On the next page, 2 means of access. I'm thinking of I guess you call it the Naylor Farm up there off of 9G, has a private road going into it.
That's right.
Why would you want to have them make another road going in there? I think one road is sufficient. I think 2 means is unnecessary.
And if they build another road, they gotta build another bridge and get DEC approval to build a bridge because there's a creek that separates them from 9G.
Going along number 3.
That's fine.
Well, I
must
mean,
be-
I also would tag in a number with that, and that's where I go this extreme, we're going to everything's at 300. At 300, okay, maybe we need 2 points of access, but at 50, 100, maybe we don't need 2
Well,
means
I
of
mean,
access. That's
okay.
why I'm saying we
Right.
should have stepped it to say that anything under 100 doesn't have to have half this stuff, and it would probably be a little more palatable than jumping right to 300 and saying, well, you can get a variance for everything below that.
Well, The problem, I think, is a procedural one. You know, we're a part-time town with part-time employees, and once you start, I have no objection to, in principle, to what you're suggesting. I think implementation is the problem. I think implementation is in terms of having this sort of schedule.
It would be the same process. It's just going to be less requirements. Actually, it would make the planning board easier because they wouldn't need to go through the management plan and have two access and all these other things that if we could say, you know, like we do with subdivisions. There's a minimum subdivision up to, you know, 3-4 parcels. Anything over 4 parcels now jumps into a major, and there's a different process for it.
Okay, so what would you suggest?
Well, I would go with Russell, that I think the 100 is too large of a number to begin with, but then I would say, let's gear it up to the 100 and say that anything over the 100 then comes into that process. I don't even know if the 100's the right number, I'm just saying as an example. I mean, let's take an example, I started saying this before and I got cut off, is let's take Schultzville store. Let's say one day they want to have an event in the store, and it's a wedding. Now they're subject to this if they're doing it on a regular basis.
Yes, on a regular
They
basis.
close the store and they're having their regular.
But they wouldn't be allowed to do it according to this.
Exactly, they would not. But now you're restricting
Business.
what their business that normally, let's say they have 25 people in there, and they can normally handle 25 people because that's what their seating or whatever is. Why are we restricting them from not having a wedding that only has 25 people?
The zoning is restrictive by its very nature. It tells people what they can do, but it also tells people what they can't do. And just because you want to do something doesn't mean zoning law will allow you to do it.
But all I'm saying is they're having 25 people in there, whether they're in there to eat or they're in there to eat at a wedding.
Same bodies.
Same bodies, they're there to eat. It's not impacting anything different than they would normally have.
Yes, that could happen. Of course it could happen.
And I'm sure there's other examples, that one happened to pop out of my head.
Right. But there's a difference between, to me, there's a qualitative difference between that situation and somebody setting himself up in business and having 200 people every 2 weeks for a gathering with music and.
Well, you just said 200 people, sure, now we're
Whatever.
talking about a different.
But we're talking about large numbers here. We're talking about 100 people. We're
But
not
that's
talking
why
about
why are we
25.
lumping all the lower numbers in with the large number? That's my point.
Acre thing.
How do you break them out? I mean, you know, these suggestions are great, but I need something concrete. We need concrete here. I mean, sure, ideally, yeah, it's great, terrific. I tried to keep this thing to a manageable length and a manageable word count because I'm accused of verbosity, which is,
Can we throw out the whole
God
page
awful
limit thing and
thing.
just say that we want to write something
know,
that works?
I mean,
And it doesn't matter how many pages
We could just
it
say
is. Can we
yes,
stop talking
no,
about
check the
that?
box.
I mean, if we did all these things and came in with 30 pages, people would complain that it's too long. I can't read all this, too many words.
I know.
I mean, it's got to be one way or the other. I'm trying to come up, I'm not, believe me, I'm not claiming perfection by any stretch of the imagination.
And again, I
Just trying
personally
to come up with
think,
something viable.
based on the circumstance, that 25 acres, where it's centrally located in the acreage, and it's got good buffering, it's got good setbacks, is as good as the same 100 acres that happens to be located at the corner of the property line. I mean, it just, and a lot of the farms were built that way, so that's probably
true,
going to be
that's
more
true.
the case.
That's true. That is true, yes, you're right about that. But that's where the planning board comes into it.
But that's also,
When they review
it's
the
also set
site
by,
plan.
setbacks would make it go to the
So
planning
you think
board.
these setbacks are?
No, I didn't say anything about the setbacks.
That's what
I'm fine with the setbacks.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I don't think we need the 100 acres because we have the setbacks. That's my point.
Well, it would certainly open up a lot of possibilities. I think Russell is still waiting.
Oh,
no?
yeah.
That's all right. I like standing up too. As I said, I hope you will change that. I think that the 100 is excessive. And on 3,
Page
this
3.
Page
really.
3, number 3, what?
No, number 3, right underneath the 2 means of access on page 4.
Page 4.
The lot shall have no less than 150 feet of continuous frontage on a state or county highway. And then you go on down further, say, access to an event from a town road is not permitted. I don't agree with that at all. That's discriminatory. And as I mentioned, and I'm sure you're aware of it because you saw the article too, they recently mentioned weddings that were being done on Sunset Trail on a beautiful farm up there, that the old road is now the driveway between the house and the barn. And that road is a nice wide paved blacktop road. And it had in the paper, the Poughkeepsie Journal, an article by the guy who writes Dateline, I think it's called, that they rent it out to vacationers and for weddings. It's an ideal little location there with a beautiful farm and a barn behind it. I don't know how much acres they have. I don't know if they would want to have this called an event to do weddings there, but they could not do it because it's on a town highway.
Not without a variance.
And that's discriminatory. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to have it there too.
If they could come in to the planning board and make a persuasive case, get a variance from the ZBA, they're good to go.
Well, I love that word, Elliot, and I think it should be given out with a lot of common sense. But like I say, I was appalled when they told us, the people from Albany, saying, don't give out these variances.
I think our guys are a little bit more
You know?
flexible than that.
So I think that that section where you can't be on a town road, it says, is not permitted, is
Well,
excessive.
I can tell you where that came from, Russell, just by way of background, and we've had this discussion before, or at least we did at the planning board. A gentleman on Field Road who wanted to set himself up as a conference center on a one-lane dirt road. And it was untenable, exactly.
Well, one-lane dirt road, I wouldn't put it on Kansas Road, obviously, you know?
But again,
So-
but then you're splitting hairs.
But,
How
you
do you
know, well,
differentiate?
you may say,
We
you
can start
know,
listing all the roads, I
a
guess.
Yeah,
paved
exactly. Right.
town road in
Yeah.
excess of so many feet would be allowable, you know? Kansas Road, something like that,
Right.
definitely not.
Again, I would raise the issue that I raised with Dean. How many ways do you want to skin the cat here before things get so complicated that you begin going in circles?
Well, the hope is that people who are in control of issuing variances are practical people and don't just go by the words and say, no, you can't do it because
Well,
of this.
you know, I mean, think of since you brought up the Sunset Trail. I mean, there are 2 points of access. You can come from Hollow Road, or you could come from
Breezy Hill.
the other way, exactly. Coming from where Olga Smythe used to have her farm, you want 50 cars going on, it's a one-lane, part of that, a good part of that is a one-lane dirt road. The houses are right next to the road because they're old houses, and that's the way they were built in those days. You wouldn't want all those cars coming back and forth along that, so they'd have to come from Hollow Road, and Hollow Road is, that stretch of Hollow Road, that stretch of Sunset Trail coming from Hollow Road is paved, but it's pretty twisty, and, goes up and down, and I'm not sure that I would want 50 cars driving through there either. So, I mean, one reason for limiting the state and county roads is hopefully to avoid that problem. Now, you're not going to avoid it entirely, but at least you can make some effort in that direction. But, I mean, to do it on a place like Sunset Trail, I think you're just looking for problems there.
Well, I think since they have a good road coming in from Hollow Road, it's fine. Number 4, no structure or parking area shall be closer than 300 feet to any lot line. In the old one, it was, no structure could be closer than 200 feet, and the parking had 100 feet. So parking, you're going up 3 times to 300 feet, and structure, you went from 200 to 300. I think the old numbers were fine that were there. If you go down to 7, now assuming you're going to have a place and you want these 2 means of access, 7, new construction shall be limited so they have minimum impact on field, meadows, and woodland. Major grading or change in the topography shall not be permitted. Well, if they got to put a road in, guess what? They're going to have to do major grading and change topography to do that.
Right.
Number 8, this one really gets me. The exterior of existing residences, barns, and related structures shall be appropriately rehabilitated and restored wherever feasible. Consideration should be given to the quality of the original architecture and subsequent modifications. I'm sorry, but that just sounds to me like historical preservation run amok, you know?
Well,
It's like you're,
I would read that you have to redo the buildings, all your buildings on the property, And if you combine that with the previous discussions where it's got to be natural stone or natural wood, it is a phenomenal cost.
Well, they're saying original architecture and subsequent modifications.
No, but yet, the
I mean-
zoning in here says there's certain regions that got to be this kind of construction, so that would oversee it.
Well, we're going to end up with an architectural review board, and that's what's going to end up happening. That's what this language is sounding like.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a real problem there.
I mean, why does that paragraph even needed there? Shall be appropriately rehabilitated. You're gonna check and see if it's functional, and there's no need probably for rehabilitation a lot of times.
Some people like it rustic. Brings the
Well,
character.
I think that paragraph 8 is an overreach. If you want to go over to the next page, number 12, this is talking about,
Item number 12. Yeah, okay.
yeah, talking about the locations. And I start with fabric structures such as tents must be included on the site plan. All structures, including fabric structures, to be used as part of the event center shall, where required, obtain a certificate of occupancy for their intended use. It's like the number of tents they're going to have is going to modify. I don't see if a person puts in for a permit for this and is granted it, is going to know beforehand that, well, we're going to need 2 tents or 3 tents or 5 tents. So I think that's somewhat vague as to what they're going to need until the time comes up. And it sounds like you're, wanting it spelled out in too much detail. And it's the same thing down on the use of facilities under number 1. It says number of events per week and maximum number of attendees. I put this is going to vary as time goes on also. It's going to be hard, I would think, for people to give you definitive answers in that line. If you want to go to page 6,
Well, on page number 2 there, on that same page, under F, maximum number of attendees shall be 300. And maybe set lower.
well, it's going to be considerably lower because I don't think there's any piece of property going to be big enough to have 300.
Well,
Well, one of the suggestions as to,
Rule.
the maximum number of attendees is I would throw in the word at any one event. So this way they're applying for one permit, and what is the maximum attendee to any one event? That kind of says that, yeah, you're going to have some events smaller, but this is the maximum so that we know as a plan how to gauge traffic and everything else.
but then you'd need to have
And then you only get a permit, just like in this.
500 acres.
Yeah, but you get an occupancy here, 156 in this room. That's based on the maximum number, but that doesn't take into consideration now if I put out tables, that number's gonna go down.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So your
Depends on the
plan's
style
gotta
of
have
seating.
that as part of the occupancy, as to, this is my setup, and this is how many people I'm gonna have standing, and this is how many people I'm gonna have sitting. That's just a simpler way of clarifying it.
Moving on, page 6, number 9, dining facilities shall be used solely for the use of attendees. I put in a little arrow and staff, and I added in 11, attendees and staff, and I said, see 13 below. 13 below, second line from the bottom, actually third line from the bottom, it says, with the understanding that attendees and workers will need a reasonable amount of time at determination to exit the lot or retire to their accommodations. Workers may very well be staying at that location. So you have to include and staff in those 2 places above. In the old conference center thing, or the old zoning, not the new one that was reversed, but the original old one, it said, said, see definition and patrons and staff goes against definition in lodging for staff. So anyway, that's just 2 places that
Well, I have another comment on that paragraph 13 on that same section you were talking about. You can't be there earlier than 10 a.m. I've run 25 years
It
things.
says events shall not commence earlier than 10
Yeah.
a.m. It doesn't say people
Doesn't
can't be
mean
there.
set up.
Doesn't mean that people can't be there setting it up.
But if you're having like a golf tournament, they have 8 o'clock breakfast, and then at 9 o'clock, you go out banging the ball around. You can't do that.
Okay.
I'm just using, that's a typical format for that. I think that's much too late.
Page 7, G1. Pardon my ignorance, but the last line, and not as standalone structures. What's that mean? Barns are permitted only on the premises of event centers approved under this section and not as standalone structures. Maybe somebody that's in the building department knows what that means, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
My reading of that, that's a good question. My reading is that that these would be part of, I don't know, never mind, forget it, that doesn't make sense.
The other thing is, what about pavilions? They're not barns. I mean, a lot of places have pavilions so people can sit under it, have tables.
Doesn't mean you can't have a barn without all the other stuff that you're talking about in the law, right? You can't just have a barn sitting there.
Yeah, but why not?
Well, it says event barns, so there's a barn there that's used
That's
for
what I thought, but
events
why not?
are permitted.
I'm sorry,
You're gonna have to,
it means it has to be an event center, not, it has to be qualified as an event center, it can't just be a barn. That's, I thought what.
I guess that's what it means, yeah, but now that,
Well, you could have another barn there that's not being used for the event.
they're cow barns.
It's confusing.
All
Event
right.
barns
we need
are permitted.
clarification.
Number 2, this always bothers me when I see it, and I don't know the people from Adrian's Farm here. The applicant shall provide to the building inspector with a plan prepared by a registered licensed design professional. Those words always just raise dollar signs to me, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. I don't know what all you need, that you need is registered licensed design professional. It's like, what qualifies for that? Sounds like could be a costly burden on the person who wants to
Well, but
provide this plan to you.
a dozen years ago, when you and Lynn came to the planning board for a lot line change, you had to have that done by a licensed professional.
Well, I had a surveyor who had to
That's
prepare the lot,
That's
the
not a
survey.
design professional.
Okay,
That's a PE.
all right.
Yeah. PE. It's like the town engineer.
Right, but we allow some building of some items without a professional anything. They can just do a sketch,
Yeah. Like a deck.
Well, but.
like I'm gonna build a deck on
Yeah,
our
okay.
porch. I mean,
Sure, but we're not asking 300
Yeah,
people
but
to stand
we're
on
not
the deck.
asking for, yeah, that's.
again, we just jumped to 300
I
people,
know, I'm just
so.
saying, but like, we're not having events on those decks on the
This
back
is a
of
lot
people's
more
houses.
complicated
I mean,
than
this
that.
is more than that.
Traditionally.
I think it
especially-
should be clarified, certainly, but.
Design is the wrong word.
Yeah.
I would say PE.
A subdivision or a site plan or a special use permit requires a signature of,
Surveyor or PE.
right.
Either way.
right, okay, we can clarify that.
Well, it says to improve the event barn to enable it to obtain a certificate of occupancy for an assembly area. I mean, I don't know what, I always thought certificate of occupancy was like your house. I know I got a certificate of completion when I made the horse stalls, or
Right.
the horse barn. I
Because
got a
you don't live
certificate of
in it.
occupancy when I put an addition onto the house, but I don't have a certificate of occupancy for the original house, But it's somebody you lived in. But apparently, maybe for temporary use, you also need some kind of a CO for it. That's beyond my
I
knowledge.
mean, I would
of that.
think if people are gonna be assembling there, it would be a C of O, not a certificate of
Yeah.
compliance, right?
Typically, yes.
Yeah.
CO.
Or
Yeah.
completion, rather.
Because that looks at safety.
Exactly.
Fire extinguishers.
Right.
Electric, checking out, all that stuff.
Under page 8, special use permits, I guess I'm living in the past because I can still remember buying a candy bar and a pack of gum for a nickel. $3 million insurance for bodily injury. And I got down here, this seems excessive to me, but then I see where I can't understand these, I call bleeding heart settlements, where people get $15 million settlements for
Well,
something,
the
so.
original draft had $1 million.
That's right.
But
Yeah, now, I don't know, maybe Dean would know, I don't know how
One
much it
of-
would cost some person to get this type of insurance.
I was advised to increase that to $3 million by one of the people who reviewed the plan and had comments on it.
We typically use 1 million.
I'll stand aside for a second.
That's what I had in there.
But that's, see, I don't even know why we're asking for the liability insurance anyway, because again, now we're not, we're,
We're
you know.
liable if we ask for it.
Yeah, right.
We're a party to that.
If we're making a party to it, then we are liable.
Sorry, Ian Schrank, Fiddler's Bridge Road. I've been an insurance lawyer for
Oh,
decades.
okay.
So I was the one who suggested to go from
Oh,
1
there
million
you
to
go.
3 million.
He was the guy.
If we have 300 people, right? 3 million is not enough. If you have a fire, you have a stampede.
Oh, sure.
You'd be talking about tens of millions of dollars of claims. The fact that we have insurance does not mean we're liable. That is.
No, we don't have it.
Yeah, but
They have it.
the town doesn't ask for liability insurance unless they're renting out a town property or they're building a house. And even that, the insurance is not indemnifying us, it's indemnifying the property, and we're just verifying it.
I understand that, but I'm a taxpayer here, and if we had, God forbid, a huge disaster at one of these places, and tens of people were injured or killed, and there's any hint that the town didn't do what it was supposed to do in terms of enforcing its zoning, you can guarantee that we would be sued. If there's enough money there, we'll be sued by a bunch of people, and 3 million will not be enough. Now, that's the worst case. I actually, Dean, tend to agree with you, and I hate to say it, not so much maybe with Elliot on the issue of having some tiering here. Because when I read this, I think of, God, 300 people, oh my God, it's had cars and traffic and pollution. And then I think 25 people, and I say, that's just a party, right? It's just a big party. So to me, a solution to many of the concerns that Russ has and I've heard is sort of like we have for solar, or we propose for solar, 2 or 3 tiers, not more, at most 3. And it needs more work. Sorry, I'd be happy to help to develop it, but I think that would solve a lot of the concerns we're hearing. Is for small things, we don't need all these huge protections. 300 people, that's a big event.
It is.
I don't want, frankly, I'd reduce to 300. I don't want a 300-person event center in town. I like it quiet here. We have Omega already. I mean, that's enough. But anyway, I started about insurance, and I talked a little bit longer. I apologize.
I still don't think we should require it, because we don't require it
I'm sure
for other
Mr. Witten
people's
and
properties.
Mr. Werner are going to be thrilled, because I already addressed this next issue, so I don't have to address it. That was the one about special permit and renewals. I think that if they have a special permit, it should be a pretty simple process for them to renew it, without having to go through everything all over again, you know? And that's the end of me.
I highly doubt it.
I know you people are really sad. I
It's
really
only
have
like 8:15.
no
We've
intention of
got-
having an event function
Lots
anywhere.
of time. While we're still on page 9, while they're getting up there, number 4 on page 9, we say zoning attendees shall be provided via electronic mail to the zoning administrator, town, county, and state police. What about the sheriff,
Okay,
Adam?
fine.
And the fire district, 30 days before each event. So that says if she holds a event every weekend, just being good business, she's got to send out 30, 35 emails to all of these people saying, I got an event. I mean, that's what it says.
Yes, that's what it says. Sending an email takes about a minute and a half.
No, you got to write it and personalize it to that event.
Right,
You
right.
got to say,
I think, come on. Let's hold the phone here for a minute. We've got a lot of cherry picking going on here.
But do we have an email list for the state police?
What I would like to see, if people are serious about this, not sitting around picking at this and picking at that, give me, I mean, you've got a hard copy? Write out your comments. Give me something I can use. Sitting up here picking
Yeah,
at this and that and the other thing is not going to get us anywhere.
I think the tiered approach is.
You have it? Fine.
I'm with you too. I I just
We'll
wish
do it.
somebody would say, well, I think our,
That is what
like
we
I think all 5 of us should come up with the tiers that we think are helpful,
do.
and we email each other and we see where we all match.
But, you know,
Let's see where we can come together on
This
this.
cherry picking thing is just not working.
I have
It's not
something that I was disappointed with, and that is, when we left the last meeting, I thought we were gonna get a group of people together and sit down and try to work this out. Emails don't do it. They take forever. One person means one thing, another one means another, then you get back. When you have the synergism of a group of people, planning, zoning, board, et cetera, and you sit in a room, you say, well, we could do that, but we could do this. I think you come up with a finished product much faster and better and more quality than emails with just certain people on boards, et cetera. I got a couple of phone calls today from people that are on the zoning board that were very upset because they felt that a lot of the discussion at the last zoning meeting was not even addressed in this document, okay? And that just, to me, says you got to have a group of people that are going to sit down and come up with reasonable solutions after they go through all of this, cherry picking, whatever you want to call it.
I would disagree with what those calls told you, Nancy, with all due respect. I went back home after that ZBA meeting, and I spent quite a bit of time reworking this document in the context of the concerns that were raised at the ZBA meeting. However, having said that, the basic issue that they're concerned about, which I appreciate, there's a philosophical issue that changing numbers and details is not going to resolve. The basic concern that I came away with from the ZBA meeting, and there are a couple of people here who were at the meeting and they can correct me if I'm wrong, the basic issue as I saw it was that the people on the majority of the people who spoke at the ZBA meeting were opposed to this law on philosophical grounds. Increasing the maximum, decreasing the maximum, increasing insurance, decreasing insurance, all of these other issues we're talking about are not going to speak to that issue. That's a philosophical difference. And so in that sense, yes, I agree with what you're saying, or what the people said to you, is that I was not responding. The only way to have responded to those comments would have been to throw this thing out and stay with what we have right now. That's essentially what I would have had to do. But anything here, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, anything here goes against the philosophical concerns that were raised by the members of the ZBA, and they're perfectly reasonable
Just
concerns.
stating what I got today. But I still think a group of individuals that can truly add value get together and come up with something. I do not believe emails back and forth, and somebody didn't see this, somebody didn't respond to that, and then it ends up in a meeting here where none of us are on the same page. That's my opinion,
All right, well, I'm fine with that.
okay?
I was under the impression that that was the reason we were here tonight, but if not, then fine. I mean, I have no problem with that. I'm happy to sit down with a group of people for a couple of hours and go through this and do exactly what you said.
A consensus, then you could eliminate some of this.
And along those lines, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot from the ZBA, but we were talking about the acreage, saying that it was lower and then it was increased because of concerns that he heard at the ZBA. And every time we mention it, I see John nodding, and I'm just wondering, because I wasn't there, was the increase to what you wanted, or is it too far to you? Do you think, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there a happy medium? Is there somewhere where we can end up? I am putting you on the spot, but I mean, you're the one that was at the meeting that he's discussing, so I want to, if we... Yeah, I'd love to...
come on up and,
I would love to hear the perspective of it, and, yeah.
Oh, my goodness, there we go.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead, we'll get back to it.
My name is Bill Gannon. I live on 401 Browning Road. 40 years ago, I came out of Nam and I bought the land out here because it was a nice, quiet town. Not too much politics. I mean, 40 years ago. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that acres and buffer zones mean nothing where I live. If you go down Center Road to Clinton Hollow, anybody that has a house on the elevation, you hear everything. Okay, I never complained until this past week about somebody shooting rapid fire all weekend. Okay, Dean may not have heard it at your party, you know what I mean, but I was on the top of the mountain there. But anyway, I wanted to be a devil's advocate here.
That's at the bottom of your hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at the rec park and heard it all week.
It was on the opposite
Here's
side of
the
the
thing,
rec
I
park.
know who's doing it, you know, but I had to call the sheriff's department, okay? Because the town said it wasn't their responsibility.
But they're allowed.
I know, but I'm gonna pursue it, you know? Okay,
We'll get
here's
to
my
that.
question. These rules that you have, it doesn't consider people like me that live on a hill where noise travels. And I wanna use your Fran Marks Town Park as an example. That's rented out to any resident. Could be 100 people. You got one entrance, right? Okay, and my wife and I have never complained, even when we had little kids. But we hear bands down there playing. It's loud. So what I'm trying to tell you is that we overlooked that. And now you're trying to have 200 acres, 300 acres. And here you have a town that's not even listed, a town park on that thing,
It's exempt.
that's exempt.
I know.
Is it exempt? I don't think so.
There is actually an occupancy limit on the pavilion. There's,
Yeah,
the
but the
sign is
point is,
hanging
I'm
there. I'm just
talking
saying.
about- I'm
there's-
But they
about
put up a
noise,
tent
okay?
outside the pavilion.
Right.
Oh,
And they hold events.
That's a whole other thing.
I'm talking about
Yeah,
noise,
yeah.
because right now you have had events down there, over 100 people,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
more than
Senior,
100 people, and you got
Senior-
one entrance.
with
You
senior
got cars parked
picnic,
all over the place, you're worried about safety, and here we are with a woman here that's trying to make a living, and we got all these rules.
I think this is where we're all butting heads.
That's what I'm saying.
All
You
of
gotta
us
work
want her to
together,
make
right.
a living.
Right, but the
All
bottom
of
line
us
is-
want her to be able to make a living. We have to know
What I'm
that.
trying to say is, okay, that law you have, you're trying to enforce something that you don't even enforce in your own park.
And I objected to that to begin with.
That's ridiculous, because I live every weekend, I'm retired now, and I don't care, but I have a neighbor of mine that had 3 kids, and the kids were in the pool last summer, and these people come up on the weekend, and they're complaining about noise.
So my question to you then is, do you want us to make the law stronger so that the pavilion in Fran Mark isn't exempt? Or do
No.
you want no law at all and it just continues how it is?
I think we should work with the people, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I've overlooked the town for 40 years. I mean, that park down there, okay, so when you guys have fundraisers and you got the bands playing, I hear that till 11 o'clock at night, sometimes even later.
11 o'clock at Fran Mark?
Yeah, I mean, but nobody enforces the law there.
No, that's not true. We don't have light.
There's no lights.
There's no lighting.
No lighting, you sure?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some teenagers
there's
go down
security
there.
lighting, but there's not
You
lighting.
don't need
I don't know,
lighting
but-
to have people still there.
The park technically
Park
closed at dusk.
dusk.
Huh?
The park closes at dusk.
supposed to close, but the gate's not closed.
It's not closed. I can tell you the truth, you have had, not you guys, but people have had events down there.
We've had the tree burning.
Tree burning.
I mean, I know not too long ago, the state troopers had a retirement party down there, and they had a DJ. And they had alcohol, okay? So what I'm trying to say is, I believe that your thing is going overboard, okay? If we overlook churches and fire, the town park, okay, how can you make her have 2 entrances? But we only got one down there. And, okay, but how many acres left that park? 10?
Well, they're 2 parcels.
Yeah, but how much total, right? 10 acres?
No.
Probably 25,
about
25.
25 or so.
Yeah, but, okay,
Because
make it
the other
25
side
but
decreed
keep
it,
it.
but you can't use it.
His point is valid.
Yeah.
Still.
Your point is well taken.
And look
I
how
mean,
big
make it
25
25.
acres is. And we're requiring 100, so. I
Make
mean,
it
it's-
25, because how can you enforce something when you don't enforce it in your own park? I mean, that's my point. And also with the noise, acres and buffers, I mean, how many feet? That don't help people that live on the ridge. I mean, that thing don't mean nothing. Because somebody could have a party in this valley, and you're gonna hear it, the people that live on
yeah.
the top of the mountain.
Can I say something, John?
You gotta get up and
You gotta
talk
get
to
up.
Mike.
Everybody at home wants to
I'm
see
gonna try to
you.
make it fair, because I overlooked it for 40 years, and I think right now you're going over.
The rec park, the
No.
rec park is not really making money out of it.
No, you gotta
Make
get to the
150.
microphone.
What does the town makes for the rec park? We're renting the pavilion.
I ain't talking about money, I'm talking about noise.
Okay, I'm getting there. But the farm or this event, they're the one who's gonna make a lot of profit.
That's good.
So you cannot compare the town having this event.
What do you mean I can't?
Because it's $150 the town is
Yeah, but
making.
money has nothing to do with the noise.
I'm not talking about money. Money's got nothing to do with it.
Yes, you're talking about the use, but it's still, there is
I'm
this,
talking about the noise and the environment. It's the same thing with the same,
but the
Okay.
town pavilion is not 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, that's done. It's not 11 o'clock, it's not 12 o'clock.
I've seen it later than that, and I'll be honest with you,
Well,
I
that's-
can't prove it right
that
now.
should
That's an
be-
enforcement thing. but-
That's a noise hour ordinance, so.
No, the bottom line is, what I'm saying is, if we overlook that, and nobody ever knocked on my door and said, hey, Bill, does this noise bother you? And I would say no, because I have parties myself, and people can hear me from the valley, I can tell you that, you know what I mean? But the bottom line is, I think you're going overboard.
Well, we just approved
Okay,
thank you.
a fireworks permit for July at someone's house that I'm sure they're going to have a big party.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
Sunset Trail.
Chris?
You know, I want to touch on something Russ was talking about before, variances and stuff like that, and I guess John probably can attest to this too. When, you know, use variances are very difficult to get through, you know, coming to any zoning board. But area variance is what we commonly do for side setbacks and, you know, sheds and buildings and so forth. But this really does come as a use variance in the terms, because the property, you're changing the use from a residential lot for whatever the purpose is for a business at this point. Now, if we're trying to do, and I was thinking about this when we're hearing about their farm and work and farm stuff, and we're trying to promote farms and use on there so you guys can make reasonable amount of money to, you know, to keep within the character of the town, because that is within the comprehensive plan. Why doesn't this kind of maybe do something, and maybe I'm off base here, but I'm gonna say it, something to do with farms that are promoting their products within, that's a working farm, with the products wine, beer, produce, cattle, whatever that may be, and if that's what we're trying to gear towards to make these spaces sustainable for them, instead of going out having, because my concern, and I'm going back to this from listening to everything, if we're trying to protect the farms and trying to see the growth on that, I think we're going about this the wrong way. If we're trying to open it up for someone that has 100 acres up here that's down from the city coming back up here to open up a business to start saying, hey, I can make money on this property, and again, it goes back, it's a change of use. You're going out, and I think Ray was saying, well, why don't we have, maybe I could be wrong, but about, well, what if it's just a piece of property that's gonna be changed over from having, you know, it wasn't even a residence at that point. Someone bought, you know, on the.
Vacant
on the-
land, it's called.
What's that?
Vacant
Vacant
land.
land. Well, let me tell you right now, on the bar committee, which the assessment review, the board assessment there, which we just finished up, there's a couple big properties that, you know, they were coming in trying to get dropped, you know, one big property in general that was bought, you know, quite a bit of acreage, that this could definitely, you know, change the character on what they're gonna do with that property if we open that up. So I think we gotta look at, it is a change of use, and either A, we're gonna have to change these properties and change them in a different tax roll, then again to the general business, because it is business, or if it's a working farm, which I'm 100% for again, then we write something to protect that works with the ag and ag markets, and that kind of gives provision for that to encourage, that's the comprehensive plan, is to encourage the use of the land as far as being farming. That's what this community is about at that point. Then maybe that's where we got to look at it at this point. So, but change of use is what you're getting into at this point. You're going from residential, from a different, of a person saying, hey, I want to have a wedding for my daughter or my friend, you know, that, but I'm not making a profit on it. The town has the parks, fine. That's, you know, the town rents it out for a measly $150 on that. But all towns do that. That's not, I don't think that needs to be incorporated within this piece of, this paper here. But I think if you're going that direction, and change of use for use variance is very difficult to get with any zoning board. And the other thing I'm going to tell you is with zoning and planning boards, and I gotta say, after being on over a year, well over a year now, we got a board that gives ample amount of time with all our residents that come in there. I mean, on case we've been known to spend 3 hours on something. So, you know, we try to go through everything. As a project manager within one of my businesses, going to like Wattinger's, they give 30 minutes to make your case over 2 meetings, okay? But it's based off of a lot of emotion. When you get the planning board or the zoning board, there's different emotions and people have different agendas within them. So if you're worried about coming back down the road and having something changed midstream, and you're right, weddings, you are planning out a year, 2 years in advance. So if something changes, that changes your whole dynamic of what you're trying to do. So I think we got to look at it a little bit differently, and it's definitely a change. It's a use variance. Use variance is the property is being used for something other than what it's supposed to be. An area variance is given an exception to something.
Dimensions.
What's that?
Dimensions.
Dimensions.
Thank you.
If this is considered a,
We're going to let John come up because he was,
if the board decides that this is a
Oh,
permitted
okay.
use, then it's no longer a use variance, it's a permitted use.
It depends how it's written.
It's only a use variance if it's not a permitted use.
Sorry, John.
Well, first of all, I hate to come up here and support Elliot. But I have to say that
There you go.
the zoning
You have a fan club.
I got a fan club.
board probably did send him away feeling exactly as he expressed. Maybe not for the same reason that he feels. I think the consensus that I saw that evening when he explained this proposal was that we saw a basic change in the way the town is going to view its land. And I think to a person, and maybe Chris can back me up on this, we felt that there's no way to disguise that this is a change to a business use on priorly residential properties. The definition that you have here is the use of the land and structures and so forth, where compensation is paid to the property owner for said use. Now, I don't know how you can dress that up in any other way. That's business. And having served on the review committee, one thing that came through the comprehensive plan loudly and clearly over and over in everything that we address is that the residents who responded really don't want this town's character to change a lot. And they have, I remember specifically things coming up, like they're perfectly willing to drive more distances to go buy groceries. They don't need the services or want the services because of the loss in the nature of the character of the town. That came up over and over as we reviewed the zoning. And, some people could argue, well, not everyone responded. Well, everyone had the opportunity to respond. I don't know what the percentages are completely, but until I hear otherwise, I have to say that this town wants to go by the things that are in the comprehensive plan. Some of them might be uncomfortable for some people. Some people are waiting to see it happen. But nevertheless, that seems to be the guideline that our committee followed when, is one of the reasons why it took so long to come up with a document. I don't know how you're going to soft pedal this, and I think there is a difference between allowing a farm to supplement its income and having someone convert a parcel to an event center for the sole purposes of making money. And if that's not a change in use, I don't know what it is. Okay? So, yes, I think that our comments might have caused Elliot to raise the numbers and do things that would make this more restrictive. Because I think that was the first thought, oh my God, how many of these places are there going to be? You know, many residents here moved in next to farms, and it was a matter of choice. And they know that a farm brings with it certain smells and sounds and sights, and they were okay with that. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to go from, you know, hearing a chicken at 6 o'clock in the morning and listening to the chicken dance at 11 o'clock at night. That's a different thing. You know, you can move next to an airport, you have no right to complain. Have one built in your backyard, it's a whole different story. So I applaud you all for working through the details. This is not going to be an easy process. I don't think you should put a time limit on it, because if you can see the number of opinions there are on the simplest things, whether it be feet or the way the buildings are restructured, get ready and hunker down. But I've heard a few good things here tonight. I like the idea of a tiered system. But at the bottom of it all comes the nature of a change in use. And are you ready as a town to go for that? That's basically what you're going to have to decide. And I think the nuts and bolts of it will fall into place then.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Who else? Now? Now?
We don't give up easily.
Paul Thomas, Willow Lane. I'm on the planning board. I joined the chorus in favor of a tiered approach. You actually, in the draft, there's kind of a tiered approach because events of 30 or under are exempt. You know, you may want to kind of embellish that or use that as a basis for creating, you know, additional tiers. And I agree that 50 people is not a lot of people, and maybe that's their first tier. I think the issue, you know, we've had a few of these come before the planning board. None of them, I believe, have actually been approved. People have dropped out, but we've had a few of them come through. And the issue that we have right now, and you all know this, is we have a conference center and Dude Ranch provision that is, you know, it allows, to the gentleman's, the comments were just made, it allows a business use in a residential area on 25 acres. We have that on the books right now. What we don't know as a planning board is what that means, what that allows and what it doesn't allow. And it's also a kind of a vague and general provision that doesn't give us a lot of guidance on how to plan these things. We're in a very bizarre situation in that, per the CEO's ruling, you can have a conference center and presumably a conference, which might involve people eating and drinking and talking and gathering, but you can't have a wedding where they do exactly the same thing.
Right.
So we have a very strange setup right now, and we really need guidance, we need clarification through this law or whatever law we end up with on how to deal with those situations. And to the prior point, you may decide we don't want any of this in our town for the reasons that have been, you know, stated, but we do need something because we kind of have it, it's kind of half on the books and it's half not on the books. So we don't know, you know, we don't know where to go with that. The other general point I would make, I think a lot of good points have been made. I don't know about the acreage. You can debate that. I will say this: when these things have come up to the planning board, I'm going to speak for not the applicants, but for everybody else. There's been, I think, almost across the board, a lot of anxiety by people who get wind of these projects before they've even been proposed, about what it means for them. And these are usually the neighbors, people who are around. And, you know, there's sort of another side to this, which is these things, and I think the points that were made before were good ones. You know, you're living in a residential area and suddenly one of these things pops up. You didn't expect it and you didn't think it was going to be there. You know, there are very few, well, let me put it this way. The vast majority of people who live in the town are not going to start event centers, but many of them may end up living around them. And we got to look out for them. The applicants are going to be a very small minority of people, and you know, I am fully in favor of the agricultural carve-out, and that is a different story altogether, in my view. I'm talking about people who come into town and they would just want to make money. And you have to, you know, your constituency, and don't mean to lecture, I'm not going to lecture, is really everybody else who's not doing this, who's going to be affected by this. And, you know, and I thought the other points about how sound travels in this town, it's unbelievable how sound travels in this town.
Yeah, I know.
And everybody knows it. So anyway, those are my general points, and thank you for your time.
In the dead of morning, I can hear the train in Poughkeepsie.
You can hear the
Yeah.
trains forgetting.
So, sound does travel.
Oh, yeah. Doesn't matter, it's
far away.
the same train.
Jody Rafton, Pumpkin Lane. First of all, I am all in favor of what you gals are trying to do, and I think it's ridiculous that the town is trying to over-regulate. Nobody wants Marriott coming in here and building some giant conference center. Up in Stanfordville for years, there was Roseland Ranch, a dude ranch. It was not enormous, and it was on a little back road. It was not, you know, if you've got a barn, you're not having weddings every weekend year-round. You're doing them seasonally. You're doing them spring to fall. I have 2 sons that just got married in the last 2 years. We searched high and low to find places that we could have weddings, and you had to travel half an hour, 45 minutes. That's a pain in the neck. When you've got a lot of family in out of town, I think if Elliot, I know you and your wife are both very concerned about historic preservation. We hear it over and over again. Farms cannot exist in this town or in this state. They're going under because they can't sustain themselves. They need to find other ways to make money. And if these gals can find a way to keep that farm beautiful and well-maintained and have a source of income in there, the town of Clinton benefits because we get to keep that farm in the town. But what's going to happen, and we see it all around, is these farms, they can't afford to keep everything up. The buildings are expensive, the barns are expensive, the animals are expensive. Farms are going under. They sell that land, then a developer, somebody comes in, tears down everything, and they want to build a great big McMansion on it. You know, I think we should be doing whatever we can to make it feasible for these farms to use their buildings in other manners in order, or their land, or however. We have a Christmas tree farm down here on a twisty little road that in November and December, the traffic's crazy. And the neighbors and the locals live with it, okay? I think we need to maybe say, let's let this ride for the summer. Let's see how this works. They need to follow noise ordinances. They can't be blocking roads. Nobody's going to be parking on the street. They've got to park on the property. Kind of use it as a case study and see how bad is it? Because you're sounding like it's this big evil monster that's going to take over the town of Clinton. I don't think that's realistic. I think we let some of these things go on and see, okay, if it's going to take a long time to write the law, let's let this slide. Let's give them a variance for the summer and see how it works, as long as they're following noise ordinance or safety and things like that. Kind of work with it. I'd rather see you guys trying to work with the people in this community than trying to alienate them and regulate them to death. Because as soon as you put that regulation on there and they need a variance, and every year they've got to come back for this, it's the mood of the board that they are before whether or not they're going to be allowed. And that's no way to run a business. You give the church over here, here's the size, here's the number of people you can have. And that's not going to change from year to year. Why would it change for them every year to have to go before? If you got that use permit, you've got it until you're no longer doing that there. I think some of this is over-regulated, and to have to renew it, that's no way to run a business.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing? I agree with.
course.
It was a rhetorical question. I agree with a lot of what Jody said. But Jody, I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. What we are trying to do here is to make these people's life easier by allowing them, we're allowing them, if this law, if it's passed, as it's written, more or less, will allow a use that is currently prohibited, okay? That's what this law is trying to do, is to work with these folks and other folks who want to do this but are not allowed to. So we're not being restrictive, not at all, just the opposite. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to be proactive here and work with these folks.
But I think some of those numbers you're putting in
Well,
there
okay.
are making it
Is it unreasonable, though, that they can't do it at all right now?
Now they
That-
can't
That's
do it.
unreasonable to you.
Now they can't.
You got to come up to talk.
Well, first of all, we don't need to have a debate between the two people. I mean,
Anyway.
it's inappropriate, and I kind of agree with the fact that, and again, we've talked about the tier system, because right now, you could say, yes, you're providing a venue or an avenue to make it legal, but if the application fee is $1 million, nobody can afford it. And that's what this law is doing. It's putting so much handcuff on it that the average person just can't deal within the parameters. And by having a tiered system, it's going to make it easier for the majority. And yes, maybe we can restrict or eliminate areas that we don't want it to have, like if it's on Kansas Road, we don't want it to happen there. I mean, so we can make restrictions to where we think it's most important, but make it easy for the areas that we feel that it's most appropriate. And I think over, being next to 9G or Hollow Road or wherever are appropriate areas, and so we should make it easier for those areas.
I think we're mostly in agreement, honestly.
I think we're always in agreement.
I think we
I just
are.
think the numbers are a little off.
Yeah, I will say I am getting confused a little because we'll hear the comprehensive plan says we shouldn't have this at all. And then we hear, well, if you don't let it happen at all, then you're restricting business and we can't do that. So I'm hearing both things from the same side of the argument, and I don't know what it means. I'm trying to figure it out, but I
Can I
can't.
just say something? I just want to point out the reason why we're doing this is because right now, just like what you're saying, we could allow Adrian's Farm. The problem is there's a couple of them already who's illegally doing it. There's one on Sunset Trails, on Hollow Road. There's one 9G. There's a couple already operating. So, and that's the reason why we're trying to define this to make them legal or to really set the regulations. But it's.
You got to start somewhere, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, Russ, and rebuttal.
I thought I was done, but you know me.
Don't give up so easy.
I comment positively on, I forget his name, Ian or Ian. I love that tier system. That sounded great. The gentleman with the blue plaid shirt, I agree with many of his remarks. But I always have to get this in about your comp plan. And he didn't know the percentage that responded. It was 14-point-some% responded to that comp plan questionnaire. 14-point-some%, get that. And then out of that, they said, well, 80 or 90% felt this way. Well, if you take 80 or 90% of 14%, you're down 10% or something, And you can't assume it's a negative response bias, if you look it up scientifically. You can't assume that the 85% that didn't respond felt that way. I think the comp plan is based upon assumptions, which, you know what they say about making an assumption? And I think that's exactly what is possibly taking place in a comp plan. So I think you need to, and I realize you folks up there, I seem to be the adversary, but I give you credit because you're dealing with a lot of difficult things. And, I haven't relaxed so much since I resigned as judge after 15 years. So I do, it's not all animosity towards you folks. I think that you're trying to do what's right, but going against the comp plan is not necessarily a bad thing because I think you need to modify as time goes on. And I think the tier idea is great, but I do think that you should consider definitely lowering the size limitation, lowering the access to it, and even possibly considering lowering the requirement that it be on a county or state road. Thank you. I'm going to leave now, so you'll...
And as Paul said, you know, at 30, we're already exempt, so if we have another class or first class, let's say between 31 and 100, and then maybe from 100 to 150 or 200, whatever the number is, and then 300, you're hit with everything, I mean, that's more reasonable.
Oh, I had something to say to him. That's
It'll keep.
Just the last I, event center on agricultural lots. It says where there's an event center is proposed for a lot being used for agricultural and income from events held for event center. It's not to exceed the primary source of income for the property. Can you explain that? So you tell me I make $30,000 on my hops and then $10,000 on my barley and then hay and then everything. Am I supposed to fall under that for my events? Am I supposed to fall under that? And who's going to be watching me and doing my books on that? I don't understand how that you can tell me how much I can make. I know it's an income coming in and it is to supplement, and I understand that, but that has to be defined also. And then lastly, on the same paragraph, it says comprehensive plan is maintaining a rural and agricultural community and supporting local farmers when deciding whether or not to what extent to grant a variance. Can we change that word variance to modification for an event center for regulations? You're putting a lot of work on the zoning enforcement officer through this whole thing. I see. You have to go for all these variances, whether it's a use variance or the other variances we're talking about. So,
But the CEO cannot grant modifications unilaterally.
okay, all right, so that's,
It has to
okay.
go to the ZBA.
Understood, okay. So that was one thing that somebody asked me to ask.
Yeah.
Then I'm done.
They'll have more work. Go twice a month instead of once a month.
We'll have to double the salary.
Yeah, we will.
Well, I mean, one of the questions I would have based on what her question was, is that, yes, if this is a farm and we're trying to say that as a farm, you can do this incidental business and that it shouldn't have revenue for more than that, that would be one thing. But if they're doing it as an event center or they're doing it as any other type of, you know, for-profit business, then the limitation as to income should not, you know, exceed, has really no bearing. I think the bearing only really reflects agricultural versus any ancillary income.
I don't know.
I mean, because I even think that, you know, as far as getting the farm exemption, they also have exemptions to
That's right.
that type of income.
Got
But
$10,000 gross.
But we're trying to handle two ends of this, one being event centers at farms and also events at conference centers, restaurants, wherever.
Yeah. So does she have to sell her hops to the brewery and then consider that as income, and then the beer she sells, and that's considered income, but it's the same thing that you're incoming twice?
You could also even say that any income that it's derived from the, you know,
The farm.
the selling of the products of the farm are exempt
At
from
the
the,
event.
you know, so, I mean,
I'm just saying, you know, it's the same
but then it's a
thing.
big complication, and who's gonna check it and who's gonna monitor it, so it kinda is easier just to leave it out.
Yeah.
So it's 9:05. Do we have any more comments, other than Elliot would like us to all submit our comments and
Well, I think-
changes, and
Elliot would like 4 weeks before zoning revision.
and
meetings.
he'll come back from vacation next year?
I think what we need, as Nancy pointed, we need a scenario. To sit up here and pick and pick and pick is not going to get us
Over all the
anywhere.
notes.
So we need a plan so that when I spend 10 hours on this, it's not going to get cherry-picked to death next time. Okay? Put a lot of time into this, put a lot of effort into it from other people. I don't mind the time, and they don't either, but we have to know what's going somewhere. So if we do this again, and we go around in circles for 2 hours and get to the same point we're at now,
Well, I initially told you to begin with, as far as the acreage and everything else, that I was in objection to it.
no, that's fine. And that's
And I
okay.
said I would rather work with
Okay.
setbacks,
Fine.
to me, because that's more of the buffer to
It
the
would be-
neighbor.
It would be helpful to me, since I'm, for better or worse, carrying the ball on this thing, to get marked up copies. They can be marked up by hand, they can be marked up with a computer, it doesn't matter, I can figure it out. If I have questions, I simply get in touch with you and say, what do you mean by this, or what do you mean by that? I spread them out on a table, and I put them together and come up with something that represents a consensus. And that goes for people in the audience and anybody who's watching on TV.
So,
Philosophical issues are a separate category that are not going to be resolved by changing numbers. I understand that, and I appreciate those concerns, but I do want to emphasize that what we're trying to do here is to work with people. We're not trying to put up obstacles. We're trying to simplify life of people who want to do this and who now are not allowed to. I think it's a very important distinction, that there's still confusion about exactly what the purpose is.
so what I would recommend, if you don't have everybody's email, I mean, if you send it to me or Elliot or to both of us, that we send it to everybody, so that everybody sees the comments from anybody from the audience, because then we can see, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that, and maybe we can kind of change our...
They're all listed on the webpage, all the emails.
No, that's if I post them up there. I'm saying between now and the next time, 2 weeks from now, when we come back and talk about it, if you're going to email any suggestions, changes, revisions, that you make it available to everybody on the board. So if you don't have everybody's and you send it to me, I'll pass it along. If you send it to Elliot, Elliot should pass it along to everybody else on the board, so that we all have
All of our email addresses are on the website. so
But
you
that
can
goes for,
do all 5 of
that
us.
goes for us too.
Yeah,
That goes for the 5 of us.
Right,
as well.
right. Yeah. I'm just saying, everybody should be
Put it
CC'd
all
on it.
together. And then at least we can make some progress. Otherwise, we're just going around in circles, chasing our tails, and we're not getting
Exactly.
anywhere.
This is the first viewing of it.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I understand that. But let's make the second viewing
A little better.
take a step. At least we can make a step or two, rather than ending up in the same place that we're at now. That would be frustrating and a waste of time for everybody, to spend 2 more hours and see that we're not making any
Well, in
progress.
spite of this, some good suggestions came out of this tonight.
I mean, Nancy's suggestion, I don't know, do you want to entertain that, of having some sort of a, whatever, task force? I don't know. what you would call
Well,
it, a group of people to
let's
sit
take
down
what
and-
we've got. I mean,
Well, that's
this-
essentially
we've
what
got
everything
input
is.
now
Yeah,
from others.
exactly.
Because what's
Exactly.
what I'm thinking of is, or what I envisioned is that you're pulling all these bits and pieces together with some limited input, and you're owning it in, and please forgive me when I use this term, in a vacuum almost. You know, you're the one that's having to put it on paper, and it's not necessarily the consensus, all right? So maybe this has helped.
Yeah, when
and-
we did the zoning revision, I mean, we sat with 7 people,
Yes.
and we each had different opinions, and we all came up with
Right.
an idea. Then we brought in, let's say, consultants or whoever to come in with helping us with things that we didn't know about. So we took, a broader brush, rather than you trying to develop it all on your own and then sticking it out and then having everybody, of course, we're going to have the pointing, but we did that during the zoning revision.
Right.
We just did it in a group think, so it was easier.
Well, that's true, yeah.
And I think the 5 of us up here know this process, but let's just say for everybody, when we finish this and come up with something, everyone here is going to be a little bit unhappy. Everyone. So.
At least a little.
Well, that's awful pessimistic. I mean, I want everybody to.
There will be something in it that everyone's unhappy with.
At least something.
Well, sometimes they say that is success if everyone comes out unhappy. The only thing I wanted to say, so there is home occupations, right? So I mean, I guess this is going under home occupations where we
No.
have, well, Dean, hold on, you're shaking your head. But this is, you're changing, again, we have certain things, you can run a business out of your home.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that are in zoning. You're opening up, and I'm gonna say, to the person who was talking about, open up with having a big piece of property and having a Marriott. One of the other things I haven't really touched on too much was the Airbnbs coming in here.
That's different, yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, looking at what we sat through with the bar committee, okay, the last night and then the last week, and seeing the big pieces of property that are going through being for sale, and first of all, I'm gonna tell you there's one, and I'm not gonna say the address, the value that they supposedly bought it for had to have something go on the backside for that size property, and it is gonna get resold, and if something like this passes, I can tell you, you're gonna open it up to have a big resort come in, you know, like a Marriott or some, under LLC or something else that they're gonna put it under, and we're gonna start changing the landscape. Now, I do agree with Russ when he said, you know, sometimes a comprehensive plan, the 14%, things modify. I mean, first of all, that comprehensive plan, it's been how many years now? I mean, a decade ago.
Over.
Okay, oh, well, that's my point. So, yes, there's a reason for stuff to kind of evolve here. I think you're going about it wrong. I think when we start talking about the farms, I think we should talk about that avenue for it. People that want to have it on an acre, and you said there was someone that wanted to have it on an acre of property. We can't have that. I mean, that's not even, there's not even feasible. If there's a way to change, and what would get me on board on this, if we're gonna evolve from the comprehensive plan, then those pieces of property have to get put on the tax roll in a different way that the town benefits and cuts the tax burden from every of the other residents that are paying for the taxes on residential land, and they're gonna pay residential taxes, because when you change the use on it, unless you're changing the whole redistricting of that property and saying it's GB, they're going to be taxed on residential rates. Guys, get with the plan here. You know, if we want business in the town, which I have no problem with, then we got to get the town has to get a benefit from that, and that's going to lower the taxes for our residents. Okay, that's where it needs to be. If we're going to say, okay, we're going to take that piece of property and allow that, then they should be taxed at that. Or in their case, for a farm to protect the value with that. That's totally different. And that's where we should be with this. If we're just changing, you know, use to give someone to have, you know, hey, 100 acre, and I'm going to tell you right now, they will pop up here, and this is a desirable area. People on the Taconic makes it, you know, a great spot, and now you're going to have a lot of people coming up here, and they're going to say, hey, you know what, this is a prime place because we're not going to pay a huge amount of taxes for it. And they're going to buy that property left and right, whatever goes on the value for it. And they're going to say, oh, wait, we're not getting tax business rates? Come on, figure it out. And if you want to get with it, I can help you come up with plans. I'll sit there as a zoning board. I've been on a little over a year. I'm learning. I'm running, you know, for council this year, as everyone knows. I'm here right now. But I believe in property rights, right? I'm a firm believer in that we should have certain rights on our properties. But there's also we got to be mindful of our residents, our neighbors on here, because that's the character of the property, you know, of our town. So there's a way to do it, and at least if we're going to do it, then let's make it so it's feasible that it helps the small property owners on their tax base.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Any more?
I think we should adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned. See you in 2 weeks on Thursday.